He is Aspire's Data Center Practice Director. And from Pure Storage, we have Jason Walker. He's the Field Solutions Architect, Product Solutions Specialist, and Evangelist for Pure Storage. And gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So today's topic is simplify. Today we're talking about how do you simplify data protection, and we're bringing together Aspire technology partners, along with Cisco, along with our key partner Pure Storage. Now, every time I've had this conversation about simplify to IT operations folks, it usually starts with a really. All I see are challenges. I see threats everywhere. The clouds overhead. Data is growing. It's insurmountable. It looks like mountains on that horizon. And I'm stuck here with legacy tools, hard to find skills. And how am I going to deal with that? What do you really mean by simplify? And so let's get into today's conversation. Well, of course, we all know that data protection has changed in the digital era. Most importantly, the value of that data is so important, and we're looking to make decisions faster. So I can't do it the old way. I'm always balancing this notion of protecting my data, as well as at the same time having access to it. Now, in the old days, I could, put things on tape. I could send them out to a vault somewhere, and that data was protected. But that's not going to work anymore. Speed of recovery is paramount. I have to be back online. Now, you can look at any number of surveys and any number of analyst reports, whereas your data, your digital image represents your brand. And your client's trust in you is based on that really view of your ability to be available when they need you. And certainly nothing has changed, demonstrated that as much as the most recent year we've all gone through. So speed of recovery, speed of access. And what's also changed, of course, is the data lifecycle. We're no longer talking about static data or even just data that sits in a structured database. We're talking about data that sits at the edge. It may be manufacturing data that sits in your process equipment. It may be healthcare data that's coming out of modality devices. Or it could be student file data in your learning that's now moved out into the cloud. There's also data that spreads from a cloud environment across those IoT devices all the way into your environment and then back out again. So life cycle managing that data, moving it across that entire data landscape, not only represents a data management issue, but it also represents a data protection issue because it's different. And you may have done a great job over the last decade, 2 or 3 decades, managing and protecting that data that's set inside your data center. But that doesn't work anymore because that data is spread across a much broader landscape. And then what we're also seeing is that change in roles. We're seeing the convergence of what used to be the storage admin, what used to be the data manager, and the governance. In the past, they were different people, and different roles and different organizations and different objectives. They have to come together. Now, the way they come together is really bringing together all of that into what used to be tasks that are now moving to defining policies, then to automating out those policies and actually bringing that storage, data, and governance policies all into one place, and then future forward into the analytics, continually improving, continually looking for trends. And those analytic trends start to tell you whether or not you're seeing an attack. And so you start to see that right-hand version of, you may think of that as futures in your world, but it's actually today, the insights you're going to get. And our Pure speaker in a moment will start to talk about that as we start to use those things to tell you whether or not you see an attack, whether or not a task needs to be done. And that race, of course, is always about, am I looking at false positives, or do I see a real attack, and how fast do I detect it? And we'll talk about how that then affects our security services that Aspire brings into the solution as well. And really what you're seeing is that dramatic shift. A few years ago, you would have looked at technologies and my favorite technology or my favorite tool. And now what you're looking is that full end-to-end management. And how do I bring that all together to actually drive that sort of data protection and provide that data access and fast recovery that I need to run my business? So that's what we're seeing at Aspire. But I want to, now move the tech conversation to you, Jason. And what are you seeing at Pure?
Yeah, it's almost like the Mission Impossible movie, Kevin, where he lays out how tough it's going to be, or they talk about how tough it is, and then you say, it's much worse than you think. People, what we're seeing is that folks are walking in every day to new challenges, new SLAs, new workloads they weren't aware of before, and they're responsible for protecting that data, making it available from anywhere at any time, and keeping it protected. Oh, by the way, watch out for ransomware and other failures. Make sure I can recover at a moment's notice and recover as much data as needed at a moment's notice. And oh, by the way, keep your costs down. No pressure there. And what we see is this landscape of customers looking for different recovery points and recovery times, and how can I bring this all together in here? And our little continuum here about how Pure can address some of those things are born from listening to and noticing all these changes, Kevin. Everything across the board, being able to deliver instant recovery in active cluster, to moving into even active DR from longer distances, and being able to integrate from a snap perspective. You're kind of your first line of defense in their snap management. And, oh, by the way, integrated with legacy, data collection / backup applications. But not just from a backup standpoint, but now, like you said, Kevin, we used to be able to write tape. Now that stuff has to come back now. And oh, by the way, even though it's sitting there, let's make it usable for analytics and, data reuse type functionality. And if that wasn't enough, Kevin, we've got to figure out how to store it long term in a more resilient manner and cost effective. And so that means moving things to cloud and taking advantage of cloud technologies and being able to integrate across the board on there. And all of this ties back to what you're talking about, which is the need for, you're responsible for all that, but man, I need simplicity around any and all of it. And, our customers are looking to us to help them provide simplicity for them. Not so simple to say, but that's the idea out there in there. And that's, that is what we're seeing across that. Now, getting into Kubernetes and where those applications are living, and how do you help me with orchestrating that data? And oh, by the way, I want to try to protect the data that's in there too. So just a crazy amount of stress and chaos for that guy walking into that data center every day. And as we know, Kevin, things don't get slower. We're not going to go backward anytime soon. These things continue to ramp up, and simplicity and flexibility are going to be at the heart of all of it.
And so you made a couple of comments there, and I just want to key off on them. Of course, you said Mission Impossible, and I remember Mission Impossible. And the first thing I remember about Mission Impossible is, they would disavow knowledge of the operation. Unfortunately, business doesn't get to do that. So maybe this isn't Mission Impossible, though the task may seem impossible. But you said a couple of things that I thought were important. And one, of course, is the notion of SLAs.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned recovery times. I've had clients tell me and show me their business impact, plans and their BIAs. And at the same time, while they may have in there 4 or 8 hour recoveries or even best efforts for some tier 3, tier 4 things, right, what they quickly found is that those application tiers were different now.
Yeah.
And applications that used to be best effort are now business critical. And that data that used to be, get to it when you need it, now needs to be instantly recovered. Are you seeing that change in sort of the role that data plays in that BIA recovery, and the data that used to be best effort have changed? Are you seeing that same thing?
Well, absolutely, Kevin. And that's why really, when you get down to it, this is how Pure Storage you see the backup software integration piece of that and rapid restore for that. That's how Pure got brought into this to begin with. They didn't create something like FlashBlade, an all flash, high performance, high parallel, multi-dimensional type of array to be a backup target. That's not how they dreamed it up. But the changes in customer expectation, internal expectation around data, you're right. That database that was okay getting restored in 8 hours now needs to be back now. And we need the granularity that a backup provides. And how can we get that recovered quickly? That's how that rapid restore use case was born. Customers seeing their RTOs going well beyond a cost relevant time frame and saying we need to do something faster, and being able to take advantage, for us, being able to have the ability to restore, but not just restore quickly at scale has been critical. And so it's absolutely been the case. We've seen the SLAs moving in, and that whole shift is what's brought Flash into that market.
And you also said the other key thing was this long-term element. And I've seen that trend certainly in healthcare as an example, where long-term view of patients and being able to go back and revisit that data and start to see new trends, and are you potentially candidates for new medications, and or potentially candidates that need medication because they see trends in sort of the data that they saw before makes you now perhaps exposed to something. And certainly all of what we've seen around COVID shows that data analytics is only going to become a bigger and bigger piece. Now, Flash and cloud seem to be mutually exclusive, but maybe they're not.
No, I mean, and you've seen some of that. I mean, when we're talking about moving workloads from site to site, we're seeing customers doing a lot more work that they want to duplicate either in the cloud or something like that. So the advent from a Pure standpoint of something like Cloud Block Store, which enables the same kind of performance, but in the cloud, has allowed customers to have, and again, it ties back to flexibility, right? Being able to be more prescriptive and doctoral and get more mileage out of what they're doing for a solution. Absolutely, has been critical, and being able to, the other way around too, being able to emulate cloud-based methodologies on premises has been huge too. And you see, our acquisition of Portworx playing into that, but also even something like, with our friends at Cisco, the Flash Stack, being able to provide a cloud-like, experience from an on-premises standpoint, being able to take advantage of kind of buy as you grow, and take advantage of something that's simple to implement and tied in with over 25 of the Cisco validated designs and apps that go into that, makes a very, again, flexible and simple solution for customers to be able to take advantage of, whether you're talking about databases or virtual infrastructure, or even data protection for sure. You can take advantage of that in a converged yet disaggregated strategically type of approach here.
So I think you hit on a key thing there, because I think simplicity means one thing, but consistency and standards, which is the promise of cloud, is a key element of any implementation. So you talked about the cloud block storage, the ability to be able to have the same approaches in the cloud. You also talked about bringing that cloud-like model into your current environment. So it's really bringing the cloud to the data center and to the data, at the same time bringing the consistency so that you invest in automation. So that there's some technology there, but isn't there also a discussion here about tooling, and how do you start to not have the thousands? If we look back to the backup world a decade ago, everyone was saying, what, I'm going to standardize on one tool. And then they gave up on that, and they said, no, we're going to choose the best tool because it was just too hard. And I think what we're starting to see is the tools got better. So the promise of having one approach that reaches across your your data landscape is becoming real. Are you seeing that same thing?
Yeah, definitely. And, Pure's invested in that too, Kevin, being able to have everything riding on a Purity operating system that gives benefits across the board. And, being able to orchestrate and manage that all through Pure One, being able to give sort of a, holistic view of, everything as a part of, the system there, and being able to, do things from that model, like workload planning, VM analytics, being able to do, predictive workload, kind of hypotheticals based on that, based on what? No, all AI driven, all done by Pure One, giving predictive support too, being able to take a look at what's going on in your global environment, perhaps, and being able to proactively open a support ticket, fix something in the background, and close it without me as the data center guy walking in with chaos and just trying to meet SLAs and everything else. You need all hands on deck to help you. And that Pure One, that kind of that global orchestration, does a great job on it. Like you said, the single tool, kind of the seeing eye, but even more than just, it doesn't just tell you what's going on. It helps model action items and actionable type things as well. So definitely great. Gives all of that, puts kind of all that global information right in your hands, which I think is just such a great thing to be able to have. And what me as a customer and being from the channel myself, that is what I'm looking for, because it does bring a large degree of flexibility, but keeps it simple with a single application to interact with.
So back in the day, I remember, we used to spend a lot of time worrying about tasks, but and if you got past the task, you actually could start to make important decisions and do the things that the smart people in the data center have always been trying to do, but they, it was the forest for the trees kind of thing. So how does this change the day in the life, if you will, of that operations guy who moved from managing LUNs to managing data to actually managing events? How does that change because of Pure One?
Well, I mean, like I said, you're walking in and everything's new every day. And what, Pure One helps you to do is to be able to very quickly through a global dashboard, take a look at what's going on and look at the performance analytics. And then just with a click in a single console, being able to simulate changes, being able to take a look at where exactly a bottleneck is, just trying to align using analytics from that way, being able to quickly do DevOps type reverts and managing from that perspective, as well as, like I said, being able to have things troubleshot for you in the background, changes the way that I can approach my job. It's not so siloed anymore, and I'm not hopping from one thing to another very inefficiently with all the other tasks that I have to do, Kevin, coming in. What I really need is something that's going to be my assistant, if you will, where we see the movies where you walk in and their assistant has, here's today's list, Kevin, here you go, here's what you're doing. What does that do for you, though? It organizes, keeps it simple, and makes sure that you stay ahead of the chains, if you will, to use a football term, but to stay on time in what you're doing and to stay ahead of my progression. That's what Pure One is bringing to the table for customers there. And to me, once you start using someone like that, it's hard to get away from that, because you get addicted to that way of life, because it's made things simpler for you.
And I think that one of the key things in all this, of course, is architecture.
Yeah.
And we lead with an architecture-led approach when we engage our clients, because it's difficult. And if you go back to a few years ago or decades ago even, people used to say, put it as close to the metal as possible and choose every tool that was selected, perfect for that particular piece. But, through those years, that's no longer relevant. And actually, the hard part is at that layer where I start to think about, where do I get the best view across my entire environment? Where can I make decisions And it sounds like Pure One is an architectural choice that allows them to make decisions across a broad perspective. Do you see architecture versus tool conversations as you're having, the Pure decisions?
I think to some degree, I mean, you get those, and especially for folks who've never had a tool like this, who don't have that holistic kind of global view over everything, and even the tools that they've had have been still siloed. So we see folks looking for that in begging for the simplicity of being able to interact with it from from a tool standpoint, but almost kind of table stakes that tool is integrated with the solutions that you have out there, and being able to take advantage of that as a just as a part and parcel of the hardware that Pure is selling, is an unbelievable value as a thing. So it's kind of the merging of the two and almost becoming table stakes that you have a tool such as this that can weave throughout your entire portfolio.
Now, of course, all of this is only true if you have your data. So let's talk a little bit about ransomware and what happens in the real world when the data's gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's all hands on deck across the board. If you're working with a vendor who's not offering some help in some way with ransomware mitigation, you need to ask them how. Maybe you don't know. Maybe they have things that they do offer that you're just not aware of. It's all hands on deck to try to mitigate it. So from a Pure perspective, we're included in that as well. So what Pure brings to the table is something called safe mode snapshots, and that's for both our flash array and FlashBlade, but something that we feel brings really a trifecta of skills to the table. And that's something that's simple to implement. It's part of the package. It's not an add-on. It's just what comes with that, much like Pure One. Simple to turn on. And what it does is it creates an immutable snapshot. But okay, so everybody does immutable snapshots. Well, this is on a hidden schedule. And if somebody tries to come in and delete it, well, they can. But when they try to eradicate it, the safe mode cop has his hands up and says, this is a safe mode protected array. You cannot eradicate that snapshot. So that's great. But then when you go to recover from it, you have an immutable plus type of methodology. You could actually only work with Pure support to get to take action on it, which is that War Games 2 keys type thing, Kevin, to try to unlock it. If we can keep all the 80s movies references rolling. But it's really the third thing. Some people might have one, some people might have two, but now being able to restore at scale is something that Pure excels in. So unmatched recovery speed, that rapid restore at scale, brings that whole thing together. And this is, how we're pitching in, Kevin. I mean, that's just part of the security picture. We know there's no one thing, but, this is how Pure's pitching in as a value add to customers to say, hey, we have something to help there.
And I think that, as you said, the key here is bringing it together, because it's great to be able to recover and protect your data and hope you don't get the attack and then be able to recover from it. But, it also has to tie into the ability to detect that problem. And it's a combination of bringing the detection and the response to the protection and the recovery that makes it right. And so you talked a lot about speed of recovery, but speed of detection is key. And we have seen clients where they go back and find out that the attack happened months, 6 months, 120 days ago, or whatever the time is. And how far back do you have to go to find that good copy? And how far back do you have to go to be able to restore that whole environment? So detection is critical, and we're always seeing that balancing of detection, but not, false detection, not false positives, and sort of not reacting when it's not a problem. And that's a tricky balance. And that's an element where, we see in our security operations as an extension to the client's environment, that really to be able to focus on that attack across your entire environment. Not just the data, but the network and the endpoints, because that's where the attacks come from. And then understanding the intelligence, understanding all of the threats and things like the Talos environment, where we can see that end-to-end view of the most modern threats and always updated with the new environments and the new threats that we're seeing, and then provide that fast detection, and most important, the correlation of all of those pieces. And across there, that's where we bring in our managed detection and response. So we see that, and we see that across, where is it happening at the endpoints, where was happening across your grid, and then how do you take all of those new cloud-based services, and you see some of the cloud-based services we leverage from Cisco as part of the intelligence that goes into our platform, and then from there we bring that team of experts, the analysts and the responders, to really triage onto that environment. And then from there, just like you talked about the analytics, the defined playbooks, right? Every time you're improving your response method, and those playbooks to really be able to say, we can do it better, we can do it faster, and we've seen that before. And that, I think, is very critical in the cloud world, is we've seen it before. And so you take that application of what you've seen to the Talos space of all of the known knowledge and the events and the attacks we've seen that actually allow you then to really start to make the most secure environment you can do. You can never eliminate the threats, but being able to pull on the global knowledge and then being able to have the tools to quickly respond and quickly recover is where we see that differentiation. So I want to, bring us to a close here. But I want to thank Jason. Of course, I want to thank you as part of this. I'm going to turn it over just to see if we had any questions that we can respond to now before we wrap up.
No, it looks like you and Jason did a thorough job of covering the information.
Okay, great. And so I want to thank everyone for participating. Thank Jason for his insights and guidance into what he's seeing in the marketplace. And hopefully you'll join us again on some future webinars. Thanks again for joining.